Hi friends, how are you today? My name is Bailey Sarian and today is Monday, which means it's Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Monday. Yay! If you're new here, hi, my name is Bailey Sarian and on Mondays I like to sit down and talk about a true crime story that's been heavy on my noggin. I just wanted a good noggin. And I do my makeup at the same time. If you're interested in true crime and you like makeup, I would say subscribe because I'm here for you on Mondays. Hey, it's almost the end of the year. Can you believe it? I know. Me neither. Jeez Louise, huh? Wow. I just had to say that because wow. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Hey, before we get into today's episode, we do have a sponsor. It's HelloFresh. Hey, listen, it's the holiday season, and every year I tell myself, Bailey, you have to eat better. Because all the end of the year celebrations and work and all the pies, there's so many pies. My dinner schedule is just off. The last thing I'm doing when I get home is Googling recipes, buying ingredients, and then cooking. And then it's dark at 4 p.m. and you're like, it's too late to cook. That's what I say. Anyways, thankfully, I started using HelloFresh to break the cycle. Listen, HelloFresh is like having your own personal chef. They send pre-portioned ingredients that are fresh and healthy, so you don't have to drag yourself to the grocery store. And they even send easy recipes for you to follow, so you don't have to spend hours scrolling online or social media for recipes. You know? And I know what you might be thinking, Bailey, I know about HelloFresh. I've already heard about it. Well, listen, they've taken things to the next level. HelloFresh has doubled their menu size, and now there are over 100 recipes available each week. Plus, they now offer bigger portions. I've been so busy lately, so I've been ordering more takeout, and I hate that I am doing that. I feel such guilt afterwards. It's expensive. I could have just done it myself. Just get off your butt. But this is why I love HelloFresh, because they send everything straight to my door, and the food isn't just tasty, it's better for me. I'm not wasting a ton of money on ordering out. This time I ordered some of my favorite comfort meals, like their sweet chili beef bowl. It just is delicious and warms the soul, huh? Get up to 10 free meals on your first box at HelloFresh.com with code BaileySarianFM. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. You can get up to 10 free HelloFresh meals and free shipping. Just go to HelloFresh.com and use code BaileySarianFM. A big thank you to HelloFresh for partnering with me on today's episode, but most of all, a big thank you to you, my subscribers, my listeners, for being here. I appreciate you, because without you, I wouldn't be here right now. Now, let's get into today's story, huh? Now, if you're ever curious to know what I'm using, I'll list it down in the description box. But I'll stop talking, okay? Because let me tell you about today. It's got a lot. So today's story takes place in New Orleans. Yes, a city that has seen a lot. Hurricanes, hauntings, heartbreak. Even through the chaos of one of America's worst natural disasters, two people managed to find each other, Addie Hall and Zack Bowen. Now, both of them were said to be, young, wild, beautiful, free spirit. But when the rest of the city was underwater and devastated, the two of them were dancing in the streets, drinking by candlelight, and calling their love romance at the end of the world. But when the power came back on and reality crept in, their love story took a very dark turn. Very dark. Listen, today, the apartment where everything went down, it has now become a stop on New Orleans ghost tours. Yeah. And honestly, the question, it still kind of lingers. What really happened behind that apartment door? Was it trauma? Was it the madness that came after Hurricane Katrina? Or was it something a lot darker that was kind of brewing before the storm ever hit? This is a side note, but a long time ago when I was doing a murder mystery episode, I mentioned New Orleans and I said New Orleans down in New Orleans, and I got roasted in the comment section. God damn, you guys came for me. I just always heard it New Orleans. So, New Orleans. I want to try, okay? So it's Tuesday, October 17th, 2006. New Orleans detective Tom Moravich was dispatched to a parking garage in the heart of the French Quarter. When he arrived, he came across the body of a man that had jumped from the rooftop. So he's searching the man's pockets and he's looking for like an ID. And that's when they had found a small plastic bag containing dog tags with the name Zack Bowen on it. Then also in the pocket, they found a folded piece of paper that read, "For police only." It was all folded up. So like they open up the note and it's like this whole message. The note said, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. If you send a patrol to 826 North Rampart, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend." It said more, but like that was the main part. Detective Morovich said that Zack's note was shocking, but what waited for them at the address written on the note was, beyond anything what they could have imagined. So police, they go to the address. It's an apartment. And the moment that they step through the door, they see that the place is a mess. There's moving boxes stacked everywhere. There's beer cans like covering every surface. You could barely see like the table underneath. And then the walls. So covering the walls, there was written in black spray paint were messages saying, "I loved her. Please help me stop the pain." And there was another one that said like, "Call my wife." Then once they like started to search the rest of the apartment, what they found was intense. And they knew whatever happened here, it was personal and it was very dark. But to understand how we got to this point, we should go back about 10 years earlier when a young Zack Bowen first arrived in New Orleans with his dad. In the early months of 1996, 17-year-old Zack Bowen went on a cross-country road trip with his dad. They were mainly going across like the southern states. So, at this time, Zack was said to be charming, kind of goofy. He had a fun personality. Growing up, his parents had separated. And for the most part, he stayed with his mom for like a lot of his teenage years. But then he decided to, take off and stay with his dad. So the two of them went on like this road trip, whatever. And then when they landed in New Orleans, Louisiana, they loved it there and decided to stay put for a while. While there, Zack enrolled into the local high school. He's almost done. But instead of just finishing out his senior year, he decides to drop out, which is fine. So he drops out of high school. And then once he turned 18, Zack found work at local bars on Bourbon Street. In the heart of the city, there is this very vibrant, beautiful, historic neighborhood called the French Quarter. And right through the middle of this runs Bourbon Street. And that's where like the life of the party's at. It's filled with bars, live music, great food, and lots of people. So that's where Zack ends up finding work. He's working up and down Bourbon Street at different bars. So one night while working, Zack meets 26-year-old Lana Shupak. She was originally from Texas, and she was a dancer. Like Zack, she had moved around a lot. She became independent at a young age. So they kind of clicked, they bonded. Lana and her friends had come to New Orleans for a little vacation. But when she met Zack, they just like instantly clicked, and their relationship, it really moved fast. They just really liked each other. So she went back to Texas, and then she was talking on the phone with Zack, and he convinces her to come back and they should live together so they could be together. So Lana agrees, and she ends up moving back, and they get a small apartment together. And things were very, exciting and new. Infatuation, lust. It's all so new and exciting. But then Zack admits to Lana, I don't know how much time passed here, but Zack admits to Lana that he was only 18 years old. Now, Lana didn't know. She was 27 at the time. I know, and you're thinking, well, how the hell did she not know? How do you not know? Well, not to make excuses for her, but he was working at a bar, so she's assuming he must be at least 21. He's working at a bar. Zack was super tall, so he was 6 something. He was tall. He just looked older, and I guess she just didn't ask. But when she found out that he was really 18, I guess she was said that she was really kind of shocked and kind of low-key grossed out. She was like, oh my God, you're 18, So she ends up moving out, and then she started to distance herself from him. I think it's safe to say she was gonna break up with him, but then what had happened was she found out she was pregnant. Yeah. Shit, you know? So she finds out she's pregnant, and she's like, I feel like Zack is obviously too young to be a father. So she ended up keeping the pregnancy to herself. She didn't tell him. So on July 13th, 1997, Lana ends up giving birth to a baby boy. Now, again, she didn't tell Zack about this. So about a month goes by, and I guess, you know, it was getting kind of hard being a new mom and all that. So she finally decided, or she asked her friend to call Zack and tell him about the baby. To everyone's surprise, Zack showed up almost immediately. Like within an hour of getting the call, Zack had showed up and he met his son for the first time. It was said that something seemed to have changed in him, and like he really wanted to step up to the plate and be a good father. So quickly after, Zack got an apartment in like a good neighborhood for, you know, the family. He picked up more shifts at work, and he kind of started taking things more seriously. So everything is kind of moving along. And then one day, Zack, he ends up getting arrested. I guess he was carrying around a Coke can that he had turned into like a makeshift bong, or someone had turned into a makeshift bong. He tells police that it wasn't his. He was holding it for a friend, and obviously, like, the cops, they don't buy it. How many times do they hear that, you know? So he gets arrested, whatever. And then eventually the friend comes forward and was like, actually, he was telling the truth, it's mine. So, you know, luckily for Zack, the charges get dropped. But I guess the whole thing just really, like, shook his confidence. It was scary, and he was feeling unsure about what he was doing. He just wanted to be like a good, respectable adult and father, and it just shook him. So he ends up going to his older brother and asks him for advice. Like, what should he do? Now, his older brother had been in the army for a few years, and he seemed to be doing well for himself. So he tells Zack, like, hey, you should enlist. You know, it'd be good for you. It'd give you structure. It'll keep you out of trouble. It could help you support your family. So, I mean, it sounded good to Zack, but he didn't have his GED yet, so he would have to get that before he could even sign up. So he put the idea on hold for a minute, but it was there. The seed was planted. Then in 1998, Zack is now 19 years old, and he ends up proposing to Lana. They like really seemed to love each other, and he wanted to be a family, so it kind of seemed like the right next step for the two of them to do. Lana said it really proved to her how serious Zack was about their family, and she loved him, so she said yes. Yeah. So he's young, you know? Okay. We're not judging. The two got married that same year, and not long after, they welcomed their second child in June of 1999. Now that he was a dad of two, Zack started like really thinking about his future. So he enrolled in a GED program, and he ended up graduating the next year. So once that was done, he finally had everything he needed to enlist in the Army. He ends up signing an 8-year contract, and by May of 2000, he was off to basic training. So following his training, Zack was assigned his first post, which is like a home base for soldiers in between deployments. So he was sent to Gießen, Germany. So at first, Lana and the kids didn't move with him. They just kind of let him like get settled in. So he did. And then came his first deployment. So Zack was sent to Kosovo, which at the time was still recovering from a brutal war. His unit was part of a peacekeeping mission run by NATO, and his job was really difficult. He was assigned to help uncover mass graves. So like carefully recovering the bodies, bagging them, and then sending them off to be identified. It was, you know, work that required a lot of care and respect for the people they were trying to bring home. But it was just like dead body after dead body, you know, it's a lot. It was said while Zack was out there, like at one point he met a little girl and he gave her a piece of candy. And really he thought nothing of it. It was just kind of a small act of kindness. But the next day he learned that the little girl had been executed by opposing forces for speaking to an American soldier. So when he found this out, it stayed with him. It was said that it was one of like the first real traumas he experienced overseas. And from there, people around him kind of started to notice changes. It was said Zack became like quieter. He was more withdrawn. He was showing signs of depression. Later, it would be identified as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, but at the time it was like, something's wrong. I don't know, Now, Zack was a big guy, a big boy. He was like 6'10". He wore a size 17 shoe. 17. So at the time, the Army didn't make boots that big. So he would like squeeze his feet into smaller shoes. Now, his feet were like crammed in so tight day after day after day that his feet basically molded that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, molded to the shoe. Not great. And he ended up with like a really painful case of hammer toe. Eventually, he just like couldn't take it anymore. So he just started wearing tennis shoes instead. He had no other choice. So eventually, the Army made him a custom pair of boots, but by then the damage was already done. His feet were so bad that he needed surgery to fix them. Meanwhile, Lana and the kids were still back in New Orleans. So Zack had sent over like a bunch of paperwork so she could fill it out, and once it was done, she could come move and live with him on base. So he was kind of waiting on that, and she told him that she was too exhausted from working and parenting alone to fill out the forms. She just like didn't want to do it. So when Zack ended up getting surgery on his feet, he was given medical leave to recover. So he ended up going to back home, New Orleans, to spend his recovery and all that with his family. So while he was there, he ended up completing all the forms, to have his family live with him. And when it was time to go back to Germany, this time his family now came with him. So the 2 kids and Lana. So now they're all back in Germany. But then tragedy struck back in the US, September 11th, 2001. So after this led Zack's team. They were all deployed to Iraq. He said at first he was under the impression that they were going to Iraq to help build schools and hospitals in the area. Things were traumatic in Iraq. His troop was in active combat, and Zack was seeing his friends get hurt, and one of his best friends was killed. It was a lot, and there was really no time to process anything. Then a young Iraqi boy that he was teaching English to was the target of a bombing, and the child and his family, they were killed. Again, it seemed for befriending Americans. And to him, it was like, this is now the second time that an innocent interaction turned into people getting murdered. Like, his friends are death is all around him, and it's a lot. How do you not lose it? Now, to add to Zack's spiral, he learned that soldiers from a different troop had started abusing and torturing prisoners, and he just found it all so disgusting, and it made him question everything he thought he was fighting for. So from that point on, it was like his PTSD was just getting worse and worse. When his unit finally left Iraq in November of 2003, and he ended up returning to Germany, it was said that Zack just was not the same. He started to grow like a lot of hate towards the Army. He hated what he had seen, what they made him be a part of, and he was just angry, hurt, sad, broken, all of it. Lana said like when he came home, it was like he wasn't even there anymore. She said the outgoing, funny guy she knew had turned quiet, withdrawn, almost like a shell of himself. Okay, I hate this eyeshadow, so I had to change a heart. Let me see. Okay, so listen, over the next year, Zack stayed in Germany, but everything he had seen and experienced over the last few years had just really stuck with him. And as more time had passed, he started to just really hate being in the Army. It was said. Eventually, he started like sabotaging himself. So doing little things to just kind of piss everyone off. Like he would fail his physical tests on purpose. He would kind of rack up small write-ups. He just didn't care anymore. And then all of that finally like caught up to him, and he ended up getting discharged from the military. Now his commander actually wanted it to be an honorable discharge, but in the end, it came through as a general discharge, which essentially meant that like he would not receive veteran benefits. So like no mental health support, no life insurance, no housing assistance, nothing. So all of that service and all that, like it didn't matter. He just got dropped. Yuck. That's fucked up. So when Lana had found out that Zack had been discharged, she was pissed. She was so mad at him that she ended up leaving him and the kids in Germany, and she went back to New Orleans alone. Now the kids, they were still in school, and Zack, he wanted them to finish the semester, so he stayed behind with them until December of 2004. And then they all moved back to New Orleans to, be with Lana. But I guess things got awkward pretty fast, because Lana, she started dating like an old friend of hers, and yeah, so it was like, okay, so I guess we're not together anymore. So instead of like staying with the family, Zack ended up checking into a hotel while he looked for his own place. It was also said during this time, like Zack, because I watched an interview like with his mom, and his mom said that he didn't tell anyone that what he had experienced, but also what was going on with Lana. He was just like bottling everything up inside. Well, some time had passed, and Zack was now 27 years old, and he was in the French Quarter, and he ended up finding work as a bartender. So it seemed like he was his old self again. He was fun, he was carefree, he was a likable guy, and just people really liked him. So Zack would work the graveyard shifts at the bar, and he became very popular with the regulars, mostly the women. He's tall and he's funny, and like he just smiles at me. Okay, I got 2 different eyes. Figure it out. I'm trying. So it was here where he ended up meeting 29-year-old Addie Hall, and she was a co-worker who worked the morning shift at this bar. So who was Miss Addie? Some days I just don't know what to do with my eye makeup. I am just drawing a blank. It's the holidays. Figure it out. Okay, Addie. Who's Addie? Addie was originally from Durham, North Carolina, but people described her as a free spirit, creative. She danced, she painted, she wrote poetry, she loved to travel, all of it. Anything creative, and don't hold me back, She ended up dropping out of high school and followed her passion in life, which was dancing, and became like a really good dance teacher. Then in 2002, she ended up going to Mardi Gras with some friends, and she just fell in love with New Orleans. The energy, the vibe, everything just spoke to her, and she decided she was going to stay. Another side note. One time I went to New Orleans. This was a couple years ago. Never been. Wow. Okay, let me say, food, incredible. The nightlife, insane. You just walk around with alcohol, and everyone's just partying all the time, and there's so much food, and all you do is you eat and you drink, and that's all you do. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't hang. I could not. It was like, you just go to this bar and then eat, and then go to another bar and eat and go. I was just like, this is too much. I need to go. Oh my God. But the food was incredible. Oh my God, it was so good. It was a lot. I don't know how you guys do it. I could not keep up. Oh, and then there's like drive-through bars. Yeah, you pull up to a window, roll down your window, and you're like, I'll take 2 margaritas or whatever and shots to go. Huh? What? I was like, where am I, Oz? Like, what is this? It was just, I never experienced that before. It reminds me of like what Vegas kind of used to be. Now it's very like commercialized, but it's just wild. That was my New Orleans experience. I was so full and just so much alcohol. Okay. So, but people love it. It is cool. You walk around, there's like live music. Okay, I gotta move on. I could talk about it forever. It was, I was like, this is so much. Okay, but Addie fell in love with it. It was a vibe. But Miss Addie, she also had a dark side. When she drank or got high, she would get angry and violent. Some of her old friends and roommates, many of them part of the LGBTQ community, said that she would, if she was drinking too much or whatever, she would flip on them and start yelling homophobic slurs at them. It was like psycho. She was just full of hate and rage, and it was like night and day. She was also known to carry an unloaded gun, like keep it in her purse, and from time to time she would whip it out to intimidate people. Not just to her friends but to strangers as well. I could kind of understand that. Like, she is a young woman. You know, she has to protect herself. People are creepy. But, you know, it could be aggressive at times. But listen, as an adult, Addie, she ended up in, you know, that toxic kind of abusive relationship cycle. There was one incident where Addie said she caught her boyfriend masturbating to gay porn. I know, I was like, have I ever mentioned gay porn on Murder Mystery Makeup? I'm blushing a little bit. So she walks in and she catches him masturbating to gay porn. So I guess when she confronted him, he beat her and just leaving her bruised and broke her shoulder. It was bad. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my face because I don't know what I'm doing on my eyes. Well, eventually Addie got away from her abusive relationship, and in 2005, she was working the morning shift at the same bar Zack was working at. When she first met Zack, it was said like she didn't really like him that much. She thought he was goofy and kind of cheesy because he would do magic tricks for the customers, and she thought it was corny. But it was said that Zack, he liked her from the start, and he would even stick around like after his shift was over just to like, you know, hang out, like talk to her. So the two, they would talk, they would end up like taking shots together, and they really started to bond and like open up to one another. And it didn't take long for Addie to start liking Zack more and more. As the weeks went by, they officially started dating, and the two were said to be inseparable. But Zack, he failed to mention to Addie that technically, like, he was still married and had 2 kids. So obviously this was like really shocking to her. She's like, you got 2 kids and you were married? What the hell? I mean, how could he leave that out? So she wasn't happy about this, but, you know, after some convincing and some time, she decided to continue with their relationship. But literally a few weeks into their relationship, another major tragedy was approaching. Hurricane Katrina. I know, there's so much, right? Just a lot. Forgot we went through all this wild shit. Towards the end of August of 2005, experts were reporting to the public that Hurricane Katrina would hit New Orleans as a Category 3 storm. So it was serious, but it wasn't the end of the world. There would be some damage, but at that level, evacuation, it wasn't mandatory. But as the hours went on, it became clear that this wasn't just another hurricane. Forecasts had changed dramatically. Katrina had quickly grown into a Category 5, and officials started issuing mandatory evacuation orders for New Orleans and like the surrounding parishes. Experts knew it was going to be catastrophic. So Lana, you know, Zack's technically ex-wife and whatever, she ends up calling up Zack, and she's like concerned about the hurricane approaching. She told him that she wanted to evacuate with him and the kids, but she didn't have a car, so like she needed his help. So Zack ends up telling Lana that he didn't want to leave. Instead, he wanted to stay with Addie at her place in the French Quarter and just wait it out. Now, the French Quarter sits like on slightly higher ground, so a lot of locals tend to just stay put and like ride out the storms there. So Zack and Addie, they figured they would do that and they would be fine. But Lana, she was deeply upset. She felt like, hello, like you're choosing Addie over your kids, over their safety. Like, there shouldn't be like hesitation here. But Lana, she didn't have a car, so she was really relying on Zack to like help her out. So when she finds out that he's staying put, she felt like she had no choice but to like wait out the storm as well with the kids. You know what? I kind of hate this eyeshadow too. Why don't I just go over it? Yeah, there we go. On August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana hard. Winds were over 150 miles per hour. There was levees that were supposed to protect New Orleans, and they completely failed. And within hours, 80% of the city was underwater. It was devastating. Entire neighborhoods were gone. More than 200,000 homes were destroyed, and around 1,800 people had lost their lives. So the power was out, cell service barely worked, and people were doing like whatever they could to survive. So once the storm was over, Lana took the kids to a shelter and eventually ended up relocating to Texas. So when she got there, she tried calling Zack over and over and over again, but the calls weren't going through. So after days of silence, she started to assume, like, oh my, Zack probably didn't make it. Now, the French Quarter, it took a hit, but it wasn't underwater like most of the city was. There was still like no power, no cell service, and destruction was just all around. Zack and Addie, they were holed up in her apartment, just the two of them, and the chaos kind of, it really pulled them, made them closer together going through this. It was just them in the apartment. How do you not get closer? Well, some people do not, but you get it. So it brought them closer. Well, once the storm passed, destruction, devastation everywhere. So the two of them, they ended up like helping out around the neighborhood, clearing debris, chopping up fallen trees, and pretty soon, like, the survivors in that area kind of formed their own little community. They would all get together, hang out, have cookouts in the street, just creating a sense of family. Everything was destroyed, but they all had each other. Sounds really special. It was said that this was an exciting time for Zack and Addie. And I was like, really? Yeah, I guess, because there was no work, no authority, no bills, no responsibility. It was just them and their group, disconnected from everything else. And they were loving it. Zack and Addie, they partied like almost every single day, every night, all day, every day, doing drugs, sleeping and hooking up on the mattress that they brought outside, candles all around, music on the little boombox. Yeah, I mean, they were like, why not? There's nothing else to do while we're waiting. They even caught the attention of a few journalists who were covering post-Katrina life. Yeah, so there was an article that came out, and it had the picture of the two of them. And then the New York Times article said, in the French Quarter, Addie Hall and Zachary Bowen found an unusual way to make sure police officers regularly patrolled their house. Miss Hall, 28, a bartender, flashed her breast at the police vehicles that passed by, ensuring a regular flow of traffic. End quote. I was like, okay. All right. I don't know what to say, but okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, they were having a good time. Now, eventually, rescue teams and army troops, they rolled into the city, ready to clear debris and enforce like more evacuations. But when this happened for Zack, being like surrounded by soldiers again, it was triggering for him. And it brought back like a lot of memories that he had been trying to forget. So his PTSD started to like surface again, and this carefree, fun little world that he had built with Addie started to crack. So when people started returning to the city, Zack and Addie, I guess they became they were a little bitter. They couldn't stand the thought of returning to just a normal life with jobs and responsibilities. And while everyone was trying to get back to like a sense of normal in the city, Zack and Addie were hoping that it would just stay the same. So about a month later, when quote-unquote normal returned, Zack and Addie realized that they needed to go back to work. So Zack started working at a grocery store, and Addie went back to bartending. Meanwhile, Lana and Zack's kids, they returned to New Orleans, and that's when she found out Zack was alive and well. Oh. Could you imagine? You probably can. She was pissed, obviously. She is like, what the? I thought he was dead. Do you not care about your kids? Like, you couldn't, nothing? So she ends up contacting him, and the two of them meet up. Well, first she was pissed, and she was like, I'm just mad at you, and he apologized. And then she told him that she was just barely making it, and she really needed help financially with his kids. The two of them came to an agreement to pay child support, and also he would take the kids every other weekend. So it was said when Addie found out about this, about like him meeting up with Lana and taking the kids and whatnot, she became super irritated and upset by the situation. She felt like that his ex was like calling the shots, and she just didn't like it. It was said whenever the kids were brought to the apartment, Addie just like wouldn't interact with them at all. Sometimes I guess she would just straight up leave, and then she would come home drunk and like lock herself in the bathroom. Eventually, Addie told Zack that the kids couldn't be at her apartment anymore, and when it was his time to like have custody or whatever, they needed to stay at a hotel and not be in her space. a lot of their friends said like this was the beginning of the end for them. Even though Addie and Zack were back to like working and the real world kind of, they didn't stop partying. It was said that the two of them were casual drug users, but now it was becoming a problem. I mean, before they knew it, the two of them were doing like hundreds of dollars in coke a week. So obviously all the drugs that they're doing and the drinking is like making their fights way more explosive and just bad. It's bad. It's getting bad. So by the spring of 2006, it was said that Zack and Addie were like breaking up and getting back together almost every day. Zack started to become like super jealous of Addie. You know, she was working as a bartender. So he would show up at her work and then like go off the rails when he saw her maybe flirting with customers, or if like customers were looking at her a certain way. He was just like out of his mind. And their fights then started to get physical. One night after a major fight, Zack told friends that he was done, and he was done with Addie. He was done with New Orleans. So he took off to go stay with his family. And he left a note behind for Addie telling her that he had left for good, goodbye. But unfortunately, it didn't last long. Zack had a change of heart. The two were just like addicted to each other, you know? And like after a couple of weeks apart, he returned and went straight back to Addie. And they were right back to using, drinking, and fighting. Zack was starting to just lose control. He was fighting with everyone, friends, strangers, it didn't matter. And Addie, she wasn't any better. One night she got into an argument with like some random guy on the street. I guess she pulled out her gun and she pointed it like in his face. The guy ended up calling the cops, and Addie, she got arrested for aggravated assault with a firearm, plus possession of weed and drug paraphernalia. So she got arrested. And like Zack didn't he didn't bail her out. He let her sit there. But once she got out, she went right back to Zack. And then there was another night when Addie just like kicked Zack out, and he completely lost it. He was like outside pounding on the door, screaming, cussing her out, calling her every name in the book. And neighbors ended up calling the police. And when they showed up, you know, they're asking him to leave or whatever. And I guess Zack had like drugs in his pocket. So he was trying to like be sly and like drop the drugs. But the police saw what he was doing. He got arrested, spent 2 days in jail. And then Addie bailed him out. They were just stuck in this dangerous, toxic obsession. I mean, they couldn't be together, but they could not be apart. Now, things only got worse when Zack, he started seeing other people. Now, it was said that Zack, he identified as bisexual, and he started having a relationship with a man. But I guess like this was new news to Addie. She didn't know. And when she found out, based off what we talked about earlier, she lost it. Addie's homophobia unleashed. And they got into a huge argument. She was just calling him every name in the book. She ended up like stealing his cell phone. She ended up calling people in his contacts, telling them he had AIDS. Then she proceeded to delete all of his contacts. Well, after this, like this was it. She was done. And Addie wanted revenge, and she wanted out of the relationship. I guess at this point she had a dispute with her landlord. So she told Zack, like, hey, you know, I want to move. We should move together. We should get a place together. Because technically it was her apartment they were at. So Addie and Zack, they go see an apartment on North Rampart Street in the French Quarter. The apartment, it sat on top of the cultural center of priestess Miriam Chamani Voodoo Spiritual Temple. I know, quite the name. Does not roll off the tongue easily. But it was a cute little apartment above that. So the landlord, his name was Leo Watermeyer, gave them a tour. He's like, this is the place. And they loved it. So they offered to rent the apartment on the spot. Now, they had a verbal agreement, a verbal offer. So Zack handed over $1,500 and the landlord gave them the key. So 2 days later, Addie went to Leo's office, the landlord, and she asked him for a written lease that only had her name on it. So he's like, oh, okay, yeah. So he writes like a quick little lease agreement, and, you know, the two of them signed it. When they were done, Addie tells the landlord, she's like, yeah, I caught Zack cheating and I'm going to kick him out. So then, in the early morning of October 5th, 2006, when Zack got home from work, Addie told him what she did. She's like, yeah, I went and I got a lease agreement and your name is not on the lease. Now, it was clear to Zack, obviously, Addie had used him to like get the apartment. So they get into a huge fight. It was said that Addie was throwing his stuff out of the place. She was calling him awful names. She was throwing homophobic slurs his way, telling him he was a failure, just going on and on and on and on. And something in Zack just snapped. He couldn't take it anymore. And he just wanted her to shut up. So then Zack wrapped his hands around Addie's neck and just strangled her to death. Afterwards, he was horrified at like what he had done, and he was contemplating like what to do next. What does he do now? So I guess he sat down and he grabbed Addie's journal and he started to write like a play-by-play of what he just did. So he wrote, she had stolen this apartment. Ask Leo Watermeyer, he'll explain that one. Tried to kick me out, then would not shut the fuck up, so I very calmly strangled her. It was quick. End quote. I calmly strangled her, okay? But then it gets more disturbing because he wrote after that, quote, after sexually defiling the body a few times, I was posed with the question of how to dispose of the corpse. Yeah, I think he had sexual relations with her body. Yeah. Not great. Okay. So I guess after that, he passed out on the bed. Then the next morning he woke up and he went like straight to work. So when he showed up to work, people noticed like he looked like shit. He looked terrible. So Zack tells like one of the coworkers that Addie had left him and went back to North Carolina. She went back home. And it was said that people kind of thought like, something's not right here. That gut feeling. But they kind of dismissed those feelings because she was the type to kind of just pick up and leave. So, they just kind of ignored that, the intuition. There was another entry where Zack wrote, I was to be off all weekend, so I had plenty of time to work. But due to laziness, I spent most of that time coked up in various bars with different girls. So at some point, Zack was like overcome with guilt for what he had done. Like it was starting to hit him. So his plan was to like spend all of his cash, and then when he was done, he would take his own life. So this was the start of like a wild 9-day bender. He went to bars, he went to strip clubs, he did a ton of drugs, he had numerous hookups, and he just went all out. By October 14th, things had gone from bad to worse. Well, I think it was pretty worse, Bailey. But listen, Zack, he ends up like turning his AC in the apartment as low as it could go, turning the place into a fridge to kind of stop Addie's body from decomposing, at least for a while. At some point, after he's out of drugs and money, I think he's realizing things were coming to an end. He's writing in the diary. He's burning his arms with like the cigarette butts. Then he spray painted messages on the walls. And then he sat down and wrote what would become his final goodbye letter, or final note, really. So 12 days after killing Addie, Zack, he went to a rooftop bar in the French Quarter. When he got there, he ordered a couple of drinks and just like hung out. It was said a bartender had noticed him, and he was like walking kind of back and forth, pacing along the rooftop area. But he was just looking suspicious. So they thought that he was going to like make a run for it and not settle his bar tab. So the bartender's kind of like watching, but like they look away to like do something. And then when they look back, Zack had just completely disappeared. So Zack, in a quick second, had jumped off the rooftop, falling to his death. And that's when police had arrived to the scene. I was watching an interview with the lead detective guy, and he was like, when they first got there, he said it was unusual that for a person to jump off of the rooftop bar to end their life. He said it wasn't a normal method. So they thought at first like there was something more to it. And that's when police started searching his pockets, and they found the note leading them to the apartment. They weren't thinking that was gonna be it. So when they entered, they saw the messages spray painted on the walls. While looking around, they found in the kitchen, on the stove, there were 2 pots. So they open one of the lids, and that's when they see human head. And then in the other pot, they find hands and feet. And both pots looked as if they were cooked. So then they open up the oven door, and inside they see a large turkey pan. There were legs in the pan, also believed to be cooked. Then they open up the refrigerator, and there's a large garbage bag that contained a torso. So police had mentioned, like, this was probably the most disturbing scene that they had ever been on. While searching the place, they came across the journal that Zack was like updating, giving the play-by-play as to what happened. It was awful, right? But at least it's like case closed, I guess. Like, they know what happened. I don't know. After the police investigated the apartment, they called Lana to tell her what had happened. And it was said that she didn't believe it in the beginning. She just didn't, she's not processing it. But friends, I guess, were calling her because they were like, do not watch the news. Don't turn on the TV. The story was everywhere. Zack's family and friends were really struggling to make sense of it all. Like, right? What? Many of them just think like he really bottled everything inside. That, going to Iraq, Hurricane Katrina, his failed marriage, the losses, all this had like a major effect on him. And then he met Addie and just became obsessed. Then drugs and alcohol just seemed to like send him over the edge. As for Addie, it's unclear where or how she was like laid to rest, because it took months for anyone from her family to get in contact with the police station to claim her body from their custody. Yeah, super sad. But Zack's family claimed him as soon as they could and had like a quiet cremation service for him. It was said that his ashes were given to Lana and the kids, and years later, Lana was interviewed by Ethan Brown, an author who wrote a book about this whole tragic story called Shake the Devil Off, a true story of the murder that rocked New Orleans. Listen, it was very sad, tragic ending. Yeah, right? But the people were fascinated with what happened between these two. The media had like a field day with the story. Hold on. When do I live? So the media had they were going crazy. They gave Zack the nickname Bowen the Butcher and the Katrina Cannibal. There were others too. And people in the area, I don't know what the fuck was going on, but people in the area made t-shirts that said, "Nothing says lovin' like my girlfriend in the oven." Yeah, I didn't know what to say to that. It was just kind of sad because like it took this different like narrative. It's like, to me, when you learn about their backstory and everything, it's clear that like they were both struggling mentally, and him, I think, with his PTSD and everything, and it was like this, it's sad. He should have gotten help and whatnot, but instead, like, it turned into people, there was lots of rumors that Zack was a cannibal, and still to this day, people consider this like they say he was a cannibal, like it's become kind of like fact. But the medical examiner didn't find any proof that he like ate her at all. Just because she was found on the stove and all that, people like made their rumors up. And even though the medical examiner said like that's not true, it didn't stop the rumors. And to be honest, when I was first learning about this story, this case, I was like, what drew me in was like, oh, the Katrina Cannibal, what? And come to find out, I was like, oh, this is just really sad, right? Yeah. But so people still like consider him to be a cannibal, even though there's no proof. People were like just really fascinated by what happened, and Zack and Addie's apartment has become like a stop on like popular New Orleans ghost tours. Yeah, you can go there. It's a full-on like tourist attraction. Sure, it's kind of like a little museum. I was looking at pictures online. People like, you can go and visit, and people leave behind offerings in the kitchen, like cigarettes, liquor, money, drawings. Okay. The offerings are said to honor Zack and Addie's lost souls, and some people even claim that they've seen ghosts in the apartment. Listen, for some odd reason, there's a lot of theories as to like what really went down or what could have like caused Zack to do what he did. I was like, it seems very clear. But, you know, the academic community, they were focusing on the PTSD of it all and like the long-term effects that it can have on people. One researcher reported that PTSD could be triggered by events that have nothing to do with the original event. So even though Zack had not experienced a hurricane before, the feeling of extreme stress and all that could have like really heightened his anxiety, and it felt like what he was experiencing when he was in the army. So his story was becoming like an example of what can happen when a soldier's mental health goes ignored. So there was a psychiatrist who coined the name Katrina brain, because after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of people were experiencing short-term memory loss, widespread PTSD, anxiety, depression, and it was a lot. A lot of people were experiencing grief. People lost a lot. And mental health crisis calls increased by 61%. There's a psychiatrist named James Barbie who said, quote, "People are just wearing down. There was an initial spirit about bouncing back and recovering, but it's diminished over time as weeks have become months," end quote. So with a lot of people's mental health declining, more and more people were just making really chaotic choices than they were before the storm had hit. There's another dumb theory. I'm so sorry to hate on this one, but I really do. I think it's so dumb. But I'll tell you what it is, because a lot of people think this is true. That they think Zack was possessed. There is a whole episode about this on the History Channel. It covers a theory pretty well. And they interviewed an occult expert who believed that Zack was possessed by an evil spirit controlling him through obsession. They go on to say that the spirit was making him obsess over Addie in the most aggressive way. And many people believe that the spirit found him because they lived above a voodoo temple. I'm rolling my eyes because that's not how voodoo works. But listen, many paranormal fanatics believe that, you know, New Orleans is like a hotbed for spiritual activity. And yeah, so a lot of people just like lean into this. And I think it's annoying because we're forgetting to address the real problem, which is PTSD and like trauma and working through all that and getting people help. Instead, we're talking about ghosts, possessions. Okay, please. Like, this guy went through some fucked up shit. Same with Addie, but like for him, he went through a lot. So it's like, hello, he should have gotten help. No matter what theory you believe, Zack and Addie's story, it's not just about murder. I mean, it's really about like what happens when trauma, addiction, and chaos collide with no support and no way out. I think it's PTSD, it's trauma, and both of them just needed some help. So the VA, the Veterans Affairs, they actually updated the qualifications for who can receive benefits to give more vets access to support, and they are allowing veterans who were previously denied to reapply. Essentially what I'm getting at is that, you know how when it came to Zack, he got a general discharge and like he lost all of his benefits and stuff. So now your discharge can be like reviewed. But listen, there is help out there. Veterans in need of support can call the Veteran Crisis Hotline at 988 and then press 1, or you can text 838-255 to connect to a crisis responder. There's also an online chat available at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. And then if you suffer from hearing loss, you can dial 711, then 988. All these options are available 24/7, 365 days a year. And listen, if this story hit like just a little too close to home, please remember, like you're not alone. There's help out there, and reaching out truly can make a difference. You can call or text 988 to reach the Crisis Lifeline, or you can reach out to any of the resources I will list down below in the description box. All phone numbers and resources listed below have been verified as of the date of this episode. So whether it's for you or someone you care about, it's never too late to seek help, reach out, talk. Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. You be safe out there. Take care of yourself and your mental well-being. Yeah, and I appreciate you for being here. Make good choices. Let me know who you want me to talk about next time. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye. Oh, wait. Do we like this eye makeup? There's nothing. Okay, yeah. Bye.